an optimal outcome would be a statement or a let's say movement that comes from this, where multiple stakeholders get together, this is this, and communicate to legislature on a state level or a federal level and the broader community about what Wisconsin needs around phosphorus. So here we are. And for that, I'd love to hand it over to Melissa. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So Ken and I are kind of co-hosting this one today and looking for other leaders towards the end of the meeting. We won't rope you in just yet. We'll see, get people really excited about leading this group. So we thought we'd start off by just doing some introductions, and so everyone knows each other in this group, and then we can talk about a recap of the Phosphorus conference and the research agenda that came out of that conference. So I'll just start it off. I'm Melissa Scanlon. I'm a professor at the School of Freshwater Sciences at UW-Milwaukee and direct the Center for Water Policy. We've been, with the support of the Freshwater Collaborative, leading a network of the across the UW system of researchers who are focused on water policy. And the Phosphorus conference came out of that network meetings that we were having. There was an interest in doing a retrospective conference looking at what the state of research has been across the UW system for the past decade of having the leading rules on phosphorus in the country. We have numeric standards for phosphorus. We've had them for over 10 years, and we're really out in front of other states on that. So the conference kind of grew out of that. I worked really closely with Anya Jensen on that. She was at the Center for Water Policy leading the conference, and she could introduce herself next.
Thanks, Melissa. So yeah, my name's Anya. It's good to see so many faces again. Like Melissa said, I was a water policy specialist working with the center last year, and my main role was helping to collaborate and work with the planning committee and putting on the Phosphorus conference. And it was the first time I had done anything like that, and it was just so wonderful to work with such a rock star team and really bringing together so many people on this very specific issue. And so I got to learn more about phosphorus than I ever thought I would, but it was a great endeavor. I've since moved on, and I'm working as a staff attorney with the Midwest Environmental Advocates in Madison. So I'm just here to continue, this conversation and continue working with you all. So thank you.
Thanks, Anya. Ken?
Good morning, everyone. Ken Jensko. I'm a professor and an extension specialist based at UW-Madison in the Department of Planning and Landscape Architecture, broadly environmental policy and planning issues. I also currently lead the Water Resources Management Master's Program through the Nelson Institute and was co-host of the event last year that we're talking about. And happy to see you all here. I'll pass this on. Or would you like us just to pick someone next, Melissa? Should we do it that way?
Yes, that'd be great.
Eric, I see you in the middle of my screen. Eric Booth, go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Ken. Hi, everyone. Eric Booth, research scientist at UW-Madison in the Department of Plant and Agroecosystem Science, a new one on campus. And I do a lot of work on field monitoring of phosphorus, but also modeling, interested in kind of phosphorus mass balance at the county scale across the state, but also do quite a bit of work interdisciplinary on a few projects, one related to managed grazing. And I think I'll leave it at that. I'll kick it over to another Eric Olson.
Hey everybody, Eric Olson. I'm the Director of Extension Lakes at UW-Stevens Point. We're a statewide program that largely focuses on lake associations and lake districts and leverages shoreline property owners as effective partners in lake management. And I will pass things to Sarah Walling.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sarah Walling. I am with Clean Lakes, or excuse me, with Clean Wisconsin. I've moved too many times. So I am the Water and Agriculture Program Director, but when I was helping to plan the Phosphorus Conference, I was still with the Alliance for the Great Lakes. as their agricultural policy person, but I have a long history working in the state in agricultural water quality issues with DATCAP as a nutrient management specialist, among a billion other things at the time. So, and with that, I will go ahead and pass it to Jason Knudsen.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, Jason Knudsen. I'm the wastewater section chief at DNR. So I work with a lot of our point source discharges, permitting their discharges and reviewing plans and specs for new treatment systems. I'm also a part-time PhD candidate working with Ken Jensko at UW as well. Matt Clardy.
Hey, good morning. Matt Clardy here. I serve as the statewide phosphorus coordinator in DNR's wastewater program. And so on a day-to-day basis, that has me dealing with water quality trading, adaptive management, and our phosphorus variance programs. I will kick it over to Joe Bonnell.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. Joe Bonnell. I am currently now nutrient reduction strategy coordinator with Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, previously with UW-Madison Division of Extension in Southwest Wisconsin. And I will pass it to Raj Preet. I hope I pronounced that well.
Yeah, that was perfect. Good morning, everyone. My name is Raj Graywal. I am the water policy specialist, or one of the water policy specialists here at the Center for Water Policy, working with Melissa. I am from Milwaukee. I went to school at UW-Madison, went to law school there, and I will be presenting later on the Phosphorus conference. So you will all hear from me later. And I will kick it over to Laura.
Hey, thank you, Raj. Laura Payne. I'm kind of an outlier here. I'm a ag educator. I work with, my husband and I farm outside of Columbus, and I work closely with Grassland 2.0, which is a UW-Madison-based project that Eric Booth is also involved in, that is focused on the lofty goal of trying to transform our agricultural and food system in the Midwest to be majority perennial and minority annual. So we're just finishing up a 5-year USDA grant and looking for additional funding to continue the work. So it involves kind of a lot of different levels of working on everything from policy to supply chains to engaging local communities in identifying long-term goals for their landscapes and communities. So that's what I do. And I will pass it on. And I'll just say too, phosphorus is kind of not a main part of my expertise or my job, but I'm here just to learn and hear what everybody's doing and how this is developing. So happy to be here. I will pass it on to Heidi.
Sure. So I'm Heidi Jeter. I'm the marketing person for the Freshwater Collaborative. So I work closely with Marissa, and I'm just going to be in the background taking lots of notes and setting up a LinkedIn collaboration private group for you all. So that's me. Thanks.
Heidi, I'll pass it on for you. How about Cody?
Good morning. I'm Cody Calkins. I'm the Nutrient Management Policy Specialist at DACAP. So a lot of my position focuses on helping people understand the linkages between like the conservation compliance that we have for farmland preservation, the nutrient management standards, and like the statewide performance standards. I will go with Dave Hart.
Thanks, Cody. I'm Dave Hart, a hydrogeologist at the Wisconsin Geological and Natural History Survey. We often do a lot of applied research for Wisconsin. And right now I'm working with Chris Sahaski and Aaron Burns of UW Green Bay on a phosphorus research project, how phosphorus is moving back and forth between the Wisconsin River and stream banks. So I thought this would be a good group to connect with more. So I'm glad to be here. Amber?
Thanks, Hey, I'm Amber Raditz. I'm the Ag Water Quality Program Manager at the UW-Madison Division of Extension. We're a newer program we now have 5 funded outreach specialists around the state working on water quality in regions and especially the agricultural practice impacts of water quality. So thanks for having me. I'm going to have to duck out a little early today to be in transit, but I appreciate being able to be part of the discussion. So I'll give it to Margaret.
Hi, Margaret Kalsick. I'm an associate professor at UW-Madison in the Biological Systems Engineering Department. Fairly new to the state. I have a lot of phosphorus work under me in Ohio State, and then I've brought some of that with me to UW, and then I'm expanding my Madison, my Wisconsin portfolio slowly and trying to figure out where I fit in. But phosphorus has definitely been a big part of my work, especially modeling, using watershed models and looking at phosphorus transport in landscapes. So looking to, what I'm trying to do is like figure out, how I could fit in a meaningful way. And I've been trying to do that for a couple of years, and I've got some good ideas, but like this kind of a conversation, that's why I really want to listen in. Is there something that I could contribute to? I'll pass it to Whitney.
Hi, everyone. Whitney Presby. I'm a natural resource educator with UW-Madison Division Extension. I am based in Green Bay. I work primarily in the Lower Fox and Door-Kewanee regions. My role with Extension is to provide outreach support to demonstration farm networks. So Demo Farms is a NRCS project that's growing in Wisconsin, and they collaborate with local partners, primarily counties and agronomy staffs in that watershed. So I do a lot of outreach and designing strategies to engage more farmers and create sustainable behavior change. So I'm excited to learn more about all the work that's happening in this group. I will pass it to Michael Hawley.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Hawley. I'm an associate professor of environmental engineering at Green Bay. My research area focuses on edge of field treatment systems for agricultural runoff. And I will let my colleague down the road introduce himself. So Greg, go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Greg Kleinheinz from UW Oshkosh. I serve as the chair for the Department of Engineering Technology, and the director for the Environmental Research and Innovation Center here. We are a contract R&D facility that works with a lot of partners throughout Wisconsin, lake associations, districts, stormwater management, re-engineering for beach sites. We're a state certified lab for both surface water and groundwater phosphorus analysis. So we do that for a number of different applications, from compost and new product development. So yeah, so excited to be here and see see how the group forms and if there's opportunities for partnership. So with that, I'll pass it on to Tyler.
I'm Tyler Burns. I'm a PhD candidate at Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies, studying our market-like compliance options, so trading, MDV, adaptive management, and the narratives of success and sort of adoption around that, focusing more on sort of the political influencer lobbyist level. And actually quite a few of the people in this Zoom I've interviewed for research. I'm also a researcher with Wisconsin Policy Forum, focusing on fiscal stuff, but also some environmental issues, trying to kind of expand their environmental research portfolio. And then finally, as a public service announcement, I'm teaching sort of a warning. I'm teaching a government natural resources course this summer for Nelson Institute, and looking at the list of people in this room. Some of you may be hearing from me to serve as a potential speaker, to kind of flavor that class with some on-the-ground experience of what it's like to actually be in government and natural resources, and sort of some of the interesting things that you have to deal with and interesting ideas that you need to learn in school. So yeah, thanks for organizing this, Melissa. I will pass it to, I think, Harvey.
Morning, everybody. I'm a professor here at the UW Milwaukee School of Freshwater Sciences. Our lab does research primarily on phosphorus dynamics in Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes in general. So we're kind of interested in what's coming into the lake. That's where our research starts, looking at the fate of phosphorus as it enters the lake, and then looking at phosphorus dynamics in the lake, especially looking at how those dynamics have been altered by invasive species, particularly the Dreissenid mussels, the quagga mussels, and how that plays into issues such as nuisance algae in the nearshore zone, avian botulism issues in northern Lake Michigan, and food web structure in general. And I guess I'll pass it on to Adam Vasco.
Great. Thank you. I've been trying to keep notes of who's spoken since we're reaching the end of the list. But my name is Adam Voskel. I'm a staff attorney at Midwest Environmental Advocates, and primarily my focus at MEA is on agriculture work, and obviously that also touches on a lot of the phosphorus work that you guys are aware of and working on. I was invited by Anya, so I haven't participated much with any of you yet, but I'm excited to learn. And I will pass it to Jill. Have you spoken yet? Okay, great.
Thank you. I'm Jill Coleman-Wasik. I teach environmental science courses at University of Wisconsin River Falls. Right now, most of my research is focused on nitrogen and ag settings. I do have some history with phosphorus and lakes, though, in my background. I'm mostly here because I'm interested in kind of keeping my finger on the pulse of what's going on with phosphorus in the state. So I'm interested to see what you all have going. And unfortunately, I have to go teach in like 10 minutes. So I'm gonna have to catch up on the recording, but it's very nice to meet you all. And I think Val Klump joined a little bit late, so I'll kick it over to him.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I was late. Another meeting. Val Klump, I'm retired professor and dean at the School of Freshwater Sciences, where Harvey is. And my lab is still involved in research primarily in Green Bay, looking at the impact of nutrient inputs into the system in terms of algal production. And particularly our particular focus has been on the development of dead zones, hypoxia in the bay. So I'm working with modelers that look at the hydrodynamics of the system, but also coupling that to swap modeling of phosphorus inputs and nutrient inputs into the bay. So been very interesting work. Thank you.
I think Eric Hurley, you might be our final to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Eric Hurley. I'm the State Resource Conservationist for USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. Head up our Conservation Planning and Ecological Sciences section. And in a past life, I was the Nutrient Management Specialist for the state of Iowa.
Fantastic. Well, you all passed the game of memory, trying to remember who all introduced themselves. We went through this longer introduction in this first meeting because we know it's being recorded, and this will be a good reference point for each of us to go back if we want to see, what did Sarah work on or whatever. At this point, I want to turn it over to Raj. We have posted in the chat the report from the Phosphorus Conference that has the research agenda. If you haven't looked through that, that's okay. Raj is going to give us just a quick overview of some of the takeaways in terms of the research agenda, but it is a nice reference point for you to have because we've got about 50 different research questions that came out of that conference. We also compiled a bibliography of all of the research we could find that has been done across the UW system and beyond on this question of phosphorus contamination and how to control it and how to understand the dynamics of it. So we want to keep adding to that bibliography with research that we are all doing over the next decade. So with that, I want to turn it over to Raj to give us just a quick overview of the research agenda.
Sure. 1 second. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can you guys see this? Perfect. Thank you, Melissa. As Melissa said, I will be talking briefly about the Phosphorus Conference that was held almost a year ago last February. So I will be covering some key highlights and also covering the post-conference report, the research agenda, and I won't talk too much about the policy recommendations, but there was also a policy recommendation document. So again, almost a year ago, the Center for Water Policy co-hosted a statewide phosphorus conference where a diverse group of stakeholders came together to evaluate the past decade of phosphorus management in Wisconsin and the resulting impact on water quality. Those in the working group and all entities involved are included here on the slide, many of whom were also involved in crafting the post-conference report. So the goal of the conference was twofold. It was to gather stakeholders across the state to examine the effectiveness of Wisconsin's phosphorus regulations and their impact on water quality over the past decade, and to work with these stakeholders and to incorporate what we learned from the conference to help inform future academic research and policy on phosphorus. So in order to accomplish our twofold goal, we invited academics doing phosphorus-related research to present panel discussions. We asked agency representatives to speak about Wisconsin regulatory and compliance processes. And we sought out teams of producers and local city and county representatives to provide case study examples of phosphorus management programs they have completed or are working on. Dan Egan, a New York Times bestselling author and the Center for Water Policy's journalist in residence, was featured as our keynote speaker. With Melissa Scanlon, Egan discussed his new book, The Devil's Element, Phosphorus and a World Out of Balance. Additionally, 20 plus academic research posters were displayed throughout the day where the researchers had an opportunity to present their findings to conference attendees. So going over some big picture takeaways, phosphorus pollution, as many of us know here, is considered one of America's most widespread, costly, and challenging environmental problems. And managing agricultural phosphorus is the key to reducing phosphorus in Wisconsin's waters. We also discussed the effect of climate change on phosphorus pollution. As this region's climate gets warmer and wetter with longer growing seasons, studies project increased phosphorus loads to local watersheds. So it's becoming increasingly important for phosphorus management strategies to take into account these climatic patterns and forecasted weather events. So at the conference, we also talked about how phosphorus is being managed. Panelists at the conference explained how Wisconsin's market-like compliance options work and what the policy implications are. Some of these options are water quality trading and adaptive management. So with these market-like programs and phosphorus reduction generally, farmers are really the key players here. And in many ways, they're leading the innovation that's happening in Wisconsin. One of the best ways to support farmers in these producer-led initiatives is to help investing in watershed groups. So are these phosphorus management programs working? The answer to that we found during the conference is yes and no. So progress has been made, but we found that the scale of progress is not measuring up to the scale of the problem. So for example, new management and compliance options are now available to manage non-point sources of phosphorus pollution. We have seen more producer-led conservation groups with farmer engagement. There is less total phosphorus being used agriculturally in fertilizer. Also in urban settings, there is less phosphorus in our wastewater discharge. But the speed and scale of progress is not enough to match the problem, where phosphorus impaired waterways in Wisconsin are actually on the rise, not declining. Hence, our water quality goals are not being met despite the stringent standards we have in place to meet them. Aside from our changing climate and increased rainfall, which we know exacerbates the problem, we also have an issue of legacy phosphorus. So some potential solutions to this seemingly intractable problem and how do we move forward from here? I'm going to talk about two solutions that were discussed at the conference. We heard from University of Wisconsin-Madison professor Dr. Randy Jackson, who runs a program called Grassland 2.0, which Laura also discussed, which is a USDA-funded project working to transform the agricultural system in the upper Midwest. Transformative change would include things like rediversifying our ecosystems, adding in perennial grasslands, etc. Also, it's critical when talking about the system level change to include all stakeholders, which means the farmers, alongside the policymakers, academics, agency representatives, concerned citizens, etc. In addition to thinking about transformative agricultural change, another solutions-oriented takeaway that our keynote speaker, Dan Egan, touched on was this idea of using agricultural phosphorus in more closed systems. So for instance, harvesting excess phosphorus in manure as an asset, as opposed to letting it wash away to pollute our waters. Using phosphorus in a closed system is also more sustainable on the supply side because phosphorus is a finite resource. So these are two very different types of solutions, and there are only two potential solutions out of many to fix a problem that has no easy fix. So now I'd like to move on to the post-conference report. I'm going to provide an overview of the conference goals, identify the conference planning, the post-conference report provides an overview of conference goals, identifies the conference planning committee, co-host and sponsors, and summarizes the key lessons from each panel presentation. The report also includes the academic research agenda, which I will cover, and policy recommendations. After the close of the conference presenters and participants worked together to identify phosphorus research gaps and questions for researchers to study and answer in the next decade. So here on the slide is a helpful visual to see how the research agenda was organized. The three bigger boxes are the research areas, and then the smaller bubbles are the themes, and then within those themes are questions that I will discuss. I will highlight only a few of the themes and questions from the research agenda, but this is not an exhaustive list. So the first research area to prioritize is agricultural phosphorus management. One theme in this research area is water quality goals. Given that agricultural phosphorus management goals, specifically Wisconsin's phosphorus index target value of 6 pounds per acre per year, are not in line with river and water quality goals, questions to address include what forms of new incentives or regulations can improve alignment between phosphorus management guidelines and TMDL targets for excess phosphorus leaving agricultural fields? Are watershed-based agricultural TMDL targets implemented correctly? What should the Wisconsin phosphorus target value be to meet water quality criteria? The other themes in this area are transformative agricultural change, farmer behavior and land management practices, concentrated animal feeding operations, and quantifying costs and benefits. The second research area to prioritize, the middle larger box right here, is monitoring, evaluating, and scaling policies and programs. So themes within here concentrate on county level phosphorus management, how to track and report progress, how to scale success to reach statewide and regional impacts, and what are the challenges and opportunities associated with nutrient regulations. The third research area to prioritize, highlighted in the academic research agenda, is phosphorus in the environment and water quality. One theme here is addressing legacy phosphorus. So questions within that theme include, how long will it take to reduce legacy phosphorus in soils? What are effective technologies and solutions to reduce legacy phosphorus released from sediments, soils, floodplains, stream beds, and water bodies? Another theme in this research area is nuisance or harmful algal blooms, or HABs. Some questions to address here include, are HABs happening more often and in more places? What clues do nearshore hydrodynamics provide in understanding why cyanobacteria blooms tend to happen where they do? A third theme to highlight within this research area is climate change. So acknowledging increasing frequency and intensity of severe weather events. Some questions to address include, how should phosphorus management plans be adapted in response to a warmer, wetter climate with more frequent and intense rain events? How should phosphorus reduction strategies be adjusted to mitigate climate change? What is the absorptive capacity or tipping point for for water bodies not currently heavily affected by agricultural phosphorus pollution? And how will a longer growing season, up to 6 weeks longer, affect agriculture in terms of crop selection, double cropping, etc. in the next 20 years? Other themes here include how to address different forms of phosphorus, how to measure phosphorus reduction and the impact on water quality, and hydrologic restoration. Another primary goal of the conference was to help shape phosphorus policy change in Wisconsin. I made this helpful graphic, but I won't cover too much of this today. So going over some conclusions, in order to use the creative and innovative system stakeholders in Wisconsin have established, as well as to continue the push to develop more systems and achieve our water quality goals, we need to raise public awareness, which Dan Egan's book will help with, and to collaborate across sectors to overcome barriers that are keeping us from meeting these goals. Again, the research agenda and the policy recommendations can help provide a useful blueprint. So thank you. If anyone would like the full the conference report, I know it was linked, but it's also on the slide. If you take a picture of the screen of the QR code, it'll link you to it. And I will turn it back over to Melissa.
Thanks, Raj. Thanks for getting us on a similar page with that. And so a lot of the pre-work has been done in terms of fleshing out research questions. One of the things we're checking in about in this meeting is to discuss what has been completed or implemented of the research agenda. And obviously we won't be able to jump in and do that right now, because that's not a great use of our time, but we would love to discuss some ideas about how to basically create a survey or a platform where people can identify research questions that they're tackling from this agenda and where they are with it, or post their published work on it, so that we can keep building out a bibliography amongst this group of researchers that could be helpful to state agencies and others who are working on this issue. So let's open it up to some ideas. If anyone has ideas about the best way to kind of get feedback from this group and others about what is being taken on from the research agenda. And I know Heidi had some ideas about this as well.
Yeah, we can certainly, so one of the thoughts that we are planning on doing is setting up a private LinkedIn group that would allow people to post, to ask questions of each other. We can post documents in there. So if there was some kind of Google Doc or something along those lines, we could post that in there that people could then access. And certainly that group can be open to beyond this group. You know, and anybody could be, who's working in phosphorus could be invited to be part of that group. We would just keep it as a private group, just so that the conversations can be focused and not the whole world can see what's going on. But so that was one of the things that Melissa and I talked about before the meeting here.
Do people in this group use LinkedIn kind of across the board, where that would be a good platform to have a private group? I'm seeing some nods, some thumbs up. Anyone not on LinkedIn? Some thumbs down. It looks like
I'm
everyone
on it, but I don't usually use it for that purpose.
Yeah. Okay. So you'd have to retrain your brain to like go there for this group, which can, yeah, that can be a challenge, but hopefully not insurmountable. And are folks generally in agreement about creating like a Google spreadsheet where people can add their name to parts of this research agenda to say, hey, I'm doing this with this team and here's my publication, or it's in progress? Or do people have other ideas for how to most easily organize us.
It would be nice to have some way, maybe looking a little bit future focused towards potential grant opportunities. If there was a way to connect with potential funding sources and have them take a look at the existing agenda and see how that currently jives with their strategies and ideas. And then potentially we could assemble a team within this network to kind of go after some of those opportunities.
Yeah,
Easier said than done, but
those are great ideas, Eric. I think that was part of the long-term goals for this collaborative, is to build a network where some groupings of people can go in together to respond to RFPs. And if we can tie it to the research agenda, we're showing, there's a reason for this research. We have a collective agenda that has said this question needs to be answered. So we're hoping the research agenda helps bolster those kind of proposals for sure. I'm going to turn the hosting over to Ken because I actually have to leave in 5 minutes, but I love the direction that this is going in. And I see a comment from Eric Olson about the 2.0 grant being a big deal. And I agree. I think it'd be good to hear more about that in this meeting.
Thanks, Melissa. Maybe we can turn to whether there's room to build on Grasslands 2.0, if there's another round of that others could collaborate with, or related research that would help that. Just to pick up an idea from earlier too, some kind of an annual survey would be helpful, something that doesn't have a heavy administrative commitment, but also that would be fairly easy to fill out in case people haven't been following on in LinkedIn, and it could be channeled into that LinkedIn private group. I think the LinkedIn group is really nice as a presence, and I really endorse that idea. Some way to make sure that we're populating that outside of LinkedIn would be helpful as well. But let's jump to that question. If there is a response to that Eric posed, Laura and Eric Booth, is there room here around Grassland 2.0 work that could expand into additional collaborative projects?
Do I go first? Laura, you unmuted first.
Sure, I can chime in a little bit. I know that Randy and others on our kind of core team are looking for additional funding, and the SASCAP program, which funded our first round, just put out an RFP, and I know we're looking at that very closely. It seems to be shaping up to be working with our local learning hubs that have already been started, which are watershed-based communities that we've been working with, and maybe adding more of those watershed-based communities in the next round. So I think there's definitely potential there for collaboration. I know Randy's interested in this, very interested in this topics. So Eric, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, no, I think that's we're just broadly interested in kind of keeping the learning hubs going and expanding them. USDA SASCAP is pretty squarely on our radar. I know the NRCS just put out an RFP for some conservation cooperative agreements that we're looking at potentially. More on some of the decision support tools that we've been working with, how that can be integrated into watershed planning processes. But yeah, certainly always welcome for others that might be interested in this topic, and if there are other funding opportunities out there or other dimensions of this question to dig into.
Well,
yeah, and I was just gonna say too that Eric, your work on the grayscape and smartscape seems to be one of the closest connections with the water quality and phosphorus topics that this group is discussing.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something that we want to keep building on in the next 5 years.
Yeah, and kind of further integration with some of the innovations to Snap Plus that are coming down the pike here in the next year or two. Trying to complement Snap Plus with something that's a little bit quicker to generate scenarios, not just at the farm scale, but at the watershed scale, is kind of what we're interested in doing. And so that's not exclusive to managed grazing. It's kind of all the options that you might find in Snap Plus, but just allowing groups to kind of consider these scenarios in a more systemic way and kind of organizing that framework.
Well, thanks both Eric and Laura for adding to that, and I'm sure there'll be some follow-up as this next version comes together. Encourage Randy to reach out to this group for ideas as well. I think that does open the door also for the other types of funders. This project is funded by USDA. I think the NSF is also funding some of the work in this area for you, Eric. But also our own USDA in Wisconsin has money, as does the national USDA for current federal funding through the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act that might need that could maybe benefit from some collaborative applied academic work. Eric Hurley has left the call. I see Cody, you left a message about added to the chat that DATCAP has been successful funding some of this work, and maybe could be other resources. And then just to keep my role going here, Joe, I know that you're beginning a lot of work around nutrient reduction and potential needs for research and applied work that could emerge from that. So maybe we could get some ideas floating there after Sarah shares her thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ken. I just wanted to kind of add into that conversation that actually kind of on Eric's behalf, but I'm really selfishly also interested in tapping into the research that you guys are all doing to try to amplify that when we chase after policy or program, development opportunities, or reflect on and comment on federal, phosphorus related rulemaking or other things like that. And so being able to use place-based data and real, time generated study work that you guys are doing to justify and amplify the reasons for that policy or whatnot is at the center of my work. But it also really plays into other things, like Eric and I are on, as well as Cody on this call, are all on the 590 nutrient management team. Right now we're revising our nutrient management standard, which is a very phosphorus focused standard for agricultural nutrient management planning in the state. And so I'm really interested in being able to take advantage of tapping this group to answer some of the questions that we need some new research and new data around that I know exists to be able to support changes in things like that. So I just, I use that as an example, but certainly an area that I'm interested in being able to come back to this group to ask for support for, from without having a firm enough handle on what everybody is doing in their research programs, being able to lob those kinds of questions and hopefully get some real-time expertise brought into the conversation.
Great, thanks for that, Sarah. Cody, anything to add to that, or Joe, regarding potential other agency funds that might come into play or applications of current research?
I'll just add that we, from my perspective, I'm just kind of the lowest on the totem pole here. So we're just here to administer the programs that are brought to us by the legislature or other groups. So, we have swarm funding for county conservation staff to implement programs and practices, but like NOPP, the nitrogen optimization pilot program, was kind of had a similar push before. I was just curious if, that kind of program would work where it's on-farm research related to nitrogen, if that would work for something like phosphorus.
Great, yeah. Thanks for weighing in on that.
Yeah, Ken, I can't offer very many details, but we are initiating the development of a new nutrient reduction strategy for Wisconsin. And there are certainly going to be some calls for additional applied research to answer some key questions that will help to identify those strategies. And we do have Gulf hypoxia program funding through the bipartisan infrastructure law, and we have a second tranche of funding that's going to be coming at probably toward the end of this year, and we will be needing to submit our proposal for how we would be using those funds. I think it's going to be in the neighborhood of $2.5 million, something like that. So we will be submitting our proposal for how we would use those funds probably around mid to late summer of this year. So I suspect that the steering committee that we've put together, the multi-organizational steering committee that's putting together the nutrient reduction strategy, is going to want to include some potential applied research funding in that proposal. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be keeping my ear to the ground with this group and others in terms of what might be the most effective research to invest in the short term.
Thanks for that too. Does that spark any other thoughts from others? Or any thoughts you'd just like to share about the direction we've been going with the discussion? And if not, that's okay too. There are a couple other agenda items we wanted to touch in on. And again, as these thoughts come to you, I'll encourage you to share them in the new LinkedIn group that Heidi is going to organize for us, and whatever other ability we're able to have for a follow-up. A couple of questions. So this is an initiative to create essentially a communication hub and to share information among our group. As Melissa said at the beginning, and I'll repeat now, Melissa and I agreed to host this initial conversation with the high hopes that someone else would step forward and be interested in leading the group going forward. In fact, I think neither of us feel like we really have the capacity to do a good job of leading this group forward. So it seems to have a lot of value in terms of sharing information, and the floor is open for that. Along with that are questions about, besides communicating virtually, asynchronously, how often might this group be interested in meeting just to share notes? We spent a good portion of our time today just hearing who's who and what people are doing. That was valuable for me, and following up again to hear more about what's been happening with that work, the follow-up on the research agenda. I think those things would all be useful too at some level of frequency, including a potential in-person meeting if we can pull that off maybe in the fall. So any response to those items, including anybody volunteering to really see some energy that they want to put into this, help us continue our conversations. Everyone has a full plate. Even the people who were here and left, who it would not be fair to nominate into leadership positions, although attempting to do so. So that also says something about what we're able to do for a hub. I would encourage you all to think a little bit more about how your work might fit into this, and if you'd be interested in making sure that the conversations continue. As a first step, it sounds like there's general support for creating a private group in LinkedIn and beginning to share information there. So that seems to be a great starting point. And then we've talked, I saw in the chat panel here, there's already a lot of enthusiasm around an expanded next version of Grassland and maybe some potential there. And Sarah's idea about tapping in and amplifying current research. So just a venue for sharing work that's already happening, it sounds like is a great start. It doesn't necessarily need a lot of leadership. So I think that can just happen through the Freshwater Collaborative with their current capacity. Eric, go ahead. Are you volunteering to lead, or do you have a comment?
No, but I thought I saw a position advertised recently at UW-Madison in CALS for sort of a grant getting assistant type position. Has anybody else seen that or know what I'm talking about? This is why you troll LinkedIn once in a while, is to see who's hiring and what they're hiring for. But it looked like it was the kind of person this is just in my imagination, that at UW-Madison, there's sort of grant Sherpas helping to sort of tap into all these USDA and national funding opportunities and trying to align with groups like this to basically maximize Madison's piece of the cookie. And it seems like we have the audience, we know the partners, we kind of need that Sherpa. And So if there is somebody at Madison doing that, that's who I would try to connect with.
Yeah, I don't know specifically about CALs, but I know that there's an initiative, a new initiative on campus at Madison related to just sustainability, broadly speaking, and there's some money to support kind of grant application development. I have not worked directly with that, but Ken, do you know more about that program?
No, I think it's a recent one. I'm not sure of exactly how they're going to be helping or what types of funds they're going to support, if these are just huge research initiatives, but it's a great idea to keep an eye open for those. I think those positions have emerged and then also fallen into the shadows at times through the years. So it's great to have that kind of assistance when it's available.
Yeah.
Thanks for the suggestion, Eric.
Grant Development Specialist was the title.
So that could be one element too of collaborative work. I think the separate need is simply just for communication and keeping up with what's happening and serendipitous opportunities to pursue grants between smaller subsets of those of us on the call or outside of the call, or even just doing our work within the context of our current resources.
Ken, thinking about utilities for this group, one that I think would be helpful for a lot of folks would be to be able to propose questions to the group that it's likely there would be folks within the group who would have answers, which could be related to, you know, a specific question around phosphorus. Like, does anyone know, you know, I don't know, you name it. There's lots of good phosphorus questions, or it could be, do you know of research that specifically addressed, you know, things like that. So I don't know if that would be something where, you know, there could be time on agendas during meetings, or maybe that's something that's done through LinkedIn or, but, you know, to be able to pose questions to the group and then people with their various experience and expertise could respond to.
Thanks, Joe. That sounds like a great idea. More than just sharing what's my current research, also questions and trying to connect with others as hopefully a quick response mechanism. And to have those questions shared too, so others can see what's out there, what's catching people's attention. Heidi, let's see. Yeah, you're still on. I wonder, as you're able to pull together a LinkedIn group, what are some good next steps for us in thinking about how to make that happen, along with the description of the purpose and function, for example, posing questions to others in the group, posting new ideas and research, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think the next step would be that exactly what you said. We would put together just a little description and about what the group's function is, so people know when they want to join, kind of what the rules are. So that would be helpful. So any feedback on that, like what you would want that to be used for, would be great. And I think I can edit that as we go along. And then I think the best way will be for us to send an email to everybody who was invited to the group to this meeting to join that group. And then, you know, if you have other people that you would want to invite who are in your network, the tricky thing with LinkedIn is that, like, the owners of the group, which would be Marissa and I, we can only invite the people who are already connected to us. So so it has to be a little bit of a chain effect, but we can send out the, you know, the actual LinkedIn group URL, and then people can ask to be invited to it. So, and then once you're in it, then you can invite other people to join it. So I think that would probably be the best next step in terms of that. And certainly we can post the minutes from this meeting, and we can post the recording from this meeting in there to get things started.
Great. That sounds like a great next step. And I think we can ride that for a little while and see what kind of activity we get there, and promote some ourselves through messages and questions, and then revisit the question in a few months, maybe, about what are some next steps for this group, and is there more than we need to do than just share information through that kind of a forum. That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to that and staying connected in that way. Are there any other closing thoughts or comments before we wrap up our hour?